As I mentioned, in this project, we wanted the NQF in and the expertise we have on board, the expertise of partners, to reflect also on these conceptual and terminological issues regarding qualifications, types of qualifications. So in this presentation, I would like to set some ground for the next presentations. This presentation was prepared by Professor Sławiński and myself. Professor, he could not come, so I would be presenting on our behalf this presentation. We divided it into 4 parts. Why clarity of concepts and terms are important in designing public policy, and why defining types of qualifications in the process of NQF and EQF development, why is it important? In the third part, we proposed a kind of typology of qualifications, and then there are some final remarks. Yes, I think that we all agree that clarity of concepts and terms serves as the foundation of a successful design of policies. Yes, one of the largest threats related to the process of designing policies and discussions between decision makers and stakeholders is that very often different parties understand the concepts differently, and very often misunderstandings are unnoticed. And it is, I think, very well understood by us here in this room, and it is well described in the policy literature. Yeah. I just wanted to illustrate some examples not related to qualification systems that much. If we look, for example, at the unemployment indicator, if you read in the, I use the Polish example, but I think it is relevant to other. In the press that the unemployment reached 6.9%, then you would, and somewhere else you would read it is 4.6. Yeah, so there are different numbers, the same terms, but the concepts are different. Both data are correct. It is just that the Eurostat methodology is different. They are basing their unemployment indicators on the labor force survey by asking people, whereas the statistical office is basing their estimates on the number of registered unemployed people. Yeah, so even though the numbers are significantly different, they are both correct, and the same terms represent different concepts. Gymnasium is a very it is a common term in different countries, but this term, the concept behind this term is different. Gymnasium in Lithuania, it would be general upper secondary school, whereas gymnasium in Poland, it would be lower secondary school. So if we do not have very good clarity about what are the definitions behind the terms here, we might get lost. Purposefully, I didn't put the terms related to qualification systems like credits, credit points, validation, assessment, and others. Yes? And this topic is particularly relevant with regards to EQF and NQF developments. Why is that? The whole idea of the EQF, which is very strongly emphasized in the European Document Strategies report, is to be open for the world outside of education. And in a number of places we can read that if the frameworks are to be policy driver, they must be overarching. They must be open to different types of qualifications. I put some quotations from the very recent EQF recommendation. You can read, it is a quotation, that the EQF and NQF should be used to compare all types and levels of qualifications in the European Union. When you read other reports produced at the EU level, here it is the NQF implementation inventory produced by UNESCO, jointly by UNESCO, ETF and CEDEFOP. And again, they say about comprehensive frameworks covering all levels and types of qualifications as instruments of lifelong learning and life-wide learning policies. But when you read these reports and other reports, we do not see the definitions behind these terms. And we see that sometimes these terms are used differently, even within one report. That this definition structure has still not been developed. We have done, for the purpose of this project, a review. Yes, we wanted to look through all the reports, formal documents, research papers in search of how the qualifications are named in the literature. And we found that the most frequently used terms are formal qualifications and non-formal qualifications. Actually, we used, yes, this non-formal concept, non-formal sector qualifications in the title of the project after CEDEFOP. We had to agree on something, but still, even if there are used formal and non-formal, it has not been agreed how to define these terms. If I asked you how would you define formal and non-formal, probably we would have various answers. Formal qualifications are usually sometimes treated as those qualifications which are awarded within the formal school system, general, vet, higher. Non-formal are sometimes treated as those qualifications awarded by private training providers. But again, the understanding of these terms varies significantly. We produced the table here. You can see that the formal qualification, sometimes called state governmental qualifications, yes, are usually those which are awarded within the formal. But sometimes these formal aspects indicate that the qualification is awarded by public institutions. Sometimes formal qualifications in some systems are those which are awarded within the Chamber of Crafts or other chambers. And sometimes, like for example, yes, it is not in Europe, in New Zealand, formal qualifications are those which are included in the NQF. So we see that this criteria of distinguishing between formal and non-formal are different, and they are not always well defined in the reports. And with respect to the formal qualifications and non-formal qualifications, there are the issues, conceptual issues and terminological issues. The conceptual issues, what I have said, regards to this main criterion of distinguishing between formal and non-formal, and maybe other types of qualifications. Okay, it's like it seems that we have dealt with the problem of education and learning, types of education and learning, and we have formal education or formal learning, non-formal education, non-formal, and informal. So we have this quite well, I think, defined and commonly accepted, although not everywhere well understood, this differentiation between types of learning, whereas we do not have this issue, this conceptual issue solved regarding qualifications. What regards the terminology, the first question is, do we have only two types of qualifications? And if there are more than two, how do we name them? The second, how to avoid misunderstandings. Using adjectives formal and non-formal with reference to qualifications, yes, it poses difficulties, some, yes, explicit or implicit, as we have formal education, validation of non-formal learning, and here we have formal and non-formal qualifications. So sometimes there is, or very often there is confusion when somebody says, yes, non-formal qualification, do you mean competences acquired in a non-formal way, or do you mean qualification awarded by Chamber of Crafts, or actually what do you mean by saying this? The third question regarding terminological aspects is that if the qualification in the EQF requirement is defined as the formal outcome of validation and assessment, then formal qualification would be kind of tautological, and non-formal qualification, yes, would be logically incorrect. So how to deal with these issues? And since, as I have said, we deal in this project with the models of inclusion non-formal sector qualifications, right at the very beginning of this project we had to agree what actually we are working on, what are we going to investigate. And in my view it took us some time to have a good understanding of what French would be writing about, what Irish would be writing about, Czech, Polish, Hungarian, kind of ex ante, to anticipate, yes, and to communicate, so what these non-formal sector qualifications really are. So we had the discussions within the partnerships, and yes, we have some yes, conclusions regarding these types. Yes, we proposed that the main criterion to distinguish different types of qualification is the legal basis of the functioning of qualification in the particular qualification system, and taking into account this criterion, we proposed following types of qualifications. Type A, state-regulated qualifications in the education system. State-regulated qualifications awarded outside the education system, and non-regulated qualifications. By type A, we mean all of those qualifications which are awarded based on, which are under, let's say, state supervision, which are defined in the legislation regarding the education system in the country. And the classical examples of type A qualifications are school leaving certificate, matura certificate, master's degree, bachelor degree, doctorate. Yes. Type B, qualifications that are regulated by legal acts or ministries or national governmental agencies, but are not awarded in the formal education system. And here, of course, the examples, they differ in different countries, as we regulate, in our national systems, we regulate different things to different extent. Yes, like Ireland or Scotland are less regulated in general than Poland, for example. So we would have here the diver license, the examples tax advisor, gas installer, nuclear regulatory inspector, tourist guide. What is important to mention is that the concept of the state-regulated qualification is not the same as the, again, regulated professions, as it also poses confusion. This concept terms issue. And type C, these type of qualifications are those which are not regulated, that the firms, companies, institutions, they operate based on this, we call it freedom of economic activities. In some reports or documents you would see them called private or market or non-formal qualifications. Certificate of risk management in banking, and I see the representative of this qualification here. Hello, good morning, Ms. Mariola Szymańska-Koszczyc, yes? tennis coach, tour guiding. It is important to notice that this type C category, yes, might include qualifications awarded by non-profit organizations, community groups, voluntary organizations, trade unions. Yes, for that reason, we had this discussion within the partnership that these private or market qualifications, that we didn't like this term because they kind of implicit that these qualifications are developed only for money. Anne Murphy, she indicated that for example, in Ireland, it is important that the community groups or voluntary organizations, that their qualifications are recognized within the framework, within the national system. Do I have time? Yeah? 10 minutes, right. Yes, so there is some time for final remarks regarding what I have said. Yes, in the proposed typology, we are not looking at the awarding bodies per se, and a particular awarding body can award more than one type of qualifications. Like in the slide where I was showing this table, and that the formal education qualifications are usually treated as the formal qualifications in the literature, where there are some peculiarities with that approach. Yeah, let's imagine that the university, apart from regular study programs, develops based on some local needs or employers' needs, short training course, and this course is then certified, and the qualification is being awarded. But the qualification is not recognized by the state. It is not embraced by the supervision of the Ministry of Higher Education or any other institutions. Where this qualification would go? Yes, it is being awarded within, where actually? So this typology allows us to deal with that issue, and in that case the university would be awarding type A and type C qualifications. Yes, so we think that the type A, B and C, that it might enhance conducting discussions among experts from different countries, and at least allows to avoid misunderstandings which are unnoticed and which are at the same time so present in the current debates. And using this proposed typology, we might formulate the following hypothesis: that some NQFs, in some systems, are more populated with type A and type C, and it is clearly seen from the Ireland and Scottish examples, whereas some NQFs include type A and type C, but they have substantial number of type B qualifications, like for example in France, and expectedly in Poland, whereas some NQFs are limited to school qualifications, either general, VET, or higher education qualifications. And in some reports you would find that this category, when the authors are saying that the country is working on the overarching qualifications framework because it includes formal general, formal VET, and formal higher education qualifications, period. And what about other qualifications which are in the system? Yes, and we asked the NQF in partners to fill in the table in which they classified the qualifications according to this typology. And we could observe that it was feasible actually, and it gave us confidence to present the outcomes of this here at this conference. Okay, so thank you for your attention. Yes, if you have any questions or comments, we still have some time. Okay.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, good morning. I'm Mariola Szymańska-Koszczyc, kindly introduced by Horacy. Currently, I head the Polish Sectoral Skills Council for the financial sector. We've built the first sectoral qualifications framework in Poland for the financial services sector. And now we are in the process of trying to submit the sectoral qualifications framework into the Ministry of Finance, so it is approved and becomes part of the overall Polish qualification framework. My question is about the overarching criteria for classification of qualifications with the national qualifications framework. Because I think with the overall implementation of the national qualifications framework, the paradigm has been changed. So, yes, I'm referring, I think, to what you mentioned about New Zealand, that for them, the key criteria of classifying the qualifications into formal or non-formal is this qualification in the framework or is it outside the framework? Because I think if we do not use this criteria today, we might be sending a message that, okay, if you are formal, that means strictly supervised by the state. Then if you are regulated, you are still supervised, but the message is somewhat less. Then if you are non-formal, then you are not supervised. But now, today, with the National Qualifications Framework, we have the new criteria. And I think, especially within this project, it's important to deal with this. I'm not sure whether I've made myself clear. Yeah, okay.
Another question? Stay focused, because it's not that easy, you know.
Yes, thank you for this question. Well, these A, B, and C types, yes, they were introduced to enhance the communication. So we might have this criterion of whether it is in the framework or not by adding registered type A, registered type B. You know, there are some countries, France is an example, where some qualifications, this formal education, are not in the framework. Like general education qualifications are not in the framework. So then you can identify that some of type A qualifications are not in the framework, are not registered in the framework, because that is the logic of this system. And yes, in some our countries we see that, let's say, some type A qualifications in Czech Republic, in the NSK register, goes to the EQF descriptors directly, and some type A, like higher education qualifications, they go through via Bologna descriptors. Yes, but we were thinking of this, yes, whether the major line of distinguishing is whether it lands in the framework or not. But I think it is my personal view that we need to have the classification of qualifications which might enter the framework. Because some of them they might, some of them they cannot, and we investigated this in the reports. Yes, whether state poses any barriers to any types. And let me refer to France again. Yes, that if the qualification is not VAT oriented, as we know, it cannot go into the register. Yes. Okay. I hope that was.
Thank you. Thank you, Horacy.
Yeah,
Zoltan, another question?
Oh, thank you. It's not a question. It's much more a further note to the previous questions. I think the main issue is how the qualification framework is flexible or strict. And how it's open or closed to have qualifications or any kind of paper certifying and assessing competencies can be embedded or included into the framework. So that's, I think it raises also a question of the value of the qualification framework for the policy and for the public as well. And it also raises an issue or question of how a skill set or a competence framework can be linked to a kind of qualification framework. When a competence development is taking place in a training but doesn't lead to have any kind of certificate or competence proved qualification. So that's, I think, different types of qualification framework can respond to these issues, but now we are somewhere at the beginning of the long line.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Horacy. And I think that I will continue.